Chapter 5: Jewish Choral Music in the Great European 19th Century Synagogues. The fifth in a series of podcasts on the history and nature of Jewish choral music. In this chapter, we will look at the career and music of Julius Mombach in London and David Nowakovsky in Odessa. Julius Mombach was born in Pfungstadt, Germany, the son of cantor Lazarus Mombach. He must have been talented musically, and he must have been ambitious. At the age of 14, he was brought to London to serve as a mishorer, a voice soprano, in the great synagogue at Duke's Place, to sing simple harmonies with the newly appointed cantor Enoch Eliasson, who had also just arrived from Germany. Soon, the Jews of London were clamoring for a real choir, like the one that Solomon Zulzer had established in Vienna. However, London's chief rabbi at the time, Solomon Herschel, expressly forbade the use of sheet music, which he dismissed as a mere book of strokes. It wasn't until Rabbi Herschel's death in 1842 that modern choral singing was allowed at London's Great Synagogue. Julius Mombach was now elevated from mishorer to choirmaster, a post he would hold until his death 38 years later. Mombach not only conducted, he also arranged and composed music for his new choir. Mombach's music was unpublished in his lifetime, but appeared in 1881 in a collection edited by the Reverend Kaiser. This is our only source for Mombach's compositions. Mombach's style is hardly different from that of the anthems of his age. A good example is his setting of Psalm 150, composed for the celebration of the marriage of Baron Ferdinand de Rothschild and Miss Evelina de Rothschild in 1865. The music remains within the initial key of B-flat, with brief excursions to the relative minor. The texture is largely homophonic, with some contrasting eighth note movement in the organ. A brief fugal section begins at measure 17. David Novakovsky was born in the small town of Malin, near Kiev, Russia. At the age of 8, he ran away from home to escape a proverbial wicked stepmother. He settled in Berdichev, where he studied music and served as a mishorer, a choir boy, in the synagogue. Then, at the age of 21, he was invited to Odessa to serve at the Brody Synagogue as choirmaster and assistant, first to cantor Nissan Blumenthal, and after 1891 to the great cantor Pinchas Minkowski. More than other Russian cities, Odessa was cosmopolitan, open to the cultural influence of Western Europe. And the Brody Synagogue, like others of its ilk, came to be known as a chorshul, a choir synagogue. The Brody Synagogue in Odessa became known as a modern house of worship, with a renowned choir, cantor, and organist. Even many non-Jews would visit the synagogue just to enjoy the beauty of its music, including Peter Tchaikovsky, who praised Novakovsky as a first-rate talent. Novakovsky's most important publication was Gebete und Gesange zum Eingang des Sabbat für Solo und Chor mit und ohne Orgelbegleitung. Prayers and Songs for the Beginning of the Sabbath for Solo and Choir with and without organ accompaniment, published in Leipzig in 1901. Novakovsky's compositions went underground after his death in 1920. Literally underground. In 1924, boxes of his manuscripts were smuggled out of Soviet Russia and brought to Berlin. Within a few years, the Nazis had come to power in Berlin, and the manuscripts had to be moved again, this time to France, where they were buried in a field by a sympathetic farmer. After the war, the composer's grandson, Alexander, was able to dig up the music and eventually brought the manuscripts to the United States. Perhaps Novakovsky's greatest work is his setting for choir and cantor and organ of verses from Psalm 115, Adonai Zechoronu, a work featuring many textural contrasts. In the first 10 measures, the organ uses the repeated rhythmic leitmotif, building tension with the dominant of F minor. The chorus thunders in majestically, in the tonic, with a 3-octave unison, and then immediately morphs to supporting the tenor soloist with his calm melody in the relative major. In the next chapter, we will look at four great synagogue composers in Munich: Meyer Cohn, Max Georg Löwenstam, Israel Meyer Japhet, and Emanuel Kirchner.